Hello and welcome back to Top TV, where we are talking Severance Season 2. And getting this episode out a little later than I had wanted to originally. But because of my, I had to be out of town this weekend. So still getting it out before the next episode drops. We're talking episode 5 of season 2, Trojan's Horse, written by Ritchie, directed by Sam Donovan, and it aired February 14th, 2025 on Apple TV Plus. Let me see if I have that synopsis again here. I had it last week. The team participates in a group activity. Oh, no, that was that episode's. Hold on. Episodes 5 was, tensions emerge after the team suffers a loss. And yeah, we kind of start out with the cold open, right, of the whistling man who picks up tools at O&D and then goes to the testing floor, or as O&D calls it, the export hall. So not really sure what to make of that yet. Let's go ahead and just kind of theorize on what it could be. It looked like dentist tools, right? So we do know O&D makes a lot of stuff. Not only do they handle the paintings like Bert did for most of the time, but they also make hatchets, right? That's something that they've made in the past, or watering cans. Some, like pretty much they could almost like 3D print anything. Is kind of what it seems like. And I'm guessing this is not stuff that Lumen is selling, right? We know that their company is more of a like computer-based company, but maybe they're like an Amazon that's doing computer stuff and also selling stuff on Lumen.com or something. But when I look at this, I don't really know what my expectation is that these tools that they're giving them, that the doctor or whistling man is taking down to the next floor, the testing floor, is to use on people on the testing floor. Why not just get your own material? Why make it? Maybe it's because they're worried about cost, or maybe they're worried about tracking, stuff like that. But that's the only thing I can come up with right now, is that this is being used on the people on the testing floor for whatever reason. I do think, of course, we're going to get more about this over the course of either this season or the show as a whole, because I don't think you start a cold open this way if it's not going to be addressed. I've seen some, say that, because they're like doctor tools or dentist tools, that maybe this could be related to the guy in the white lab coat that we see leave the senator's wife's cabin in season 1, right? Like there's the guy that the doctor guy that Devin is calling out to, that leaves her cabin, and then she goes in and introduces herself. Don't know if that's just supposed to be her husband, or just a doctor checking on her pregnancy status, which is what I would actually think it is, right? But I've seen some people trying to relate these. Maybe it is a Lumen doctor because she was severed and this is the same guy. We don't know yet, but my thought mainly leans more on this is going to somehow factor in with the testing floor, and what they are doing to those people on the testing floor would be my thought more than not. We see the return of Helly R finally here. She comes down the elevator and meets Miss Huang, who walks her to Milchick's office, where we have the rest of MDR waiting, and everyone is bombarding Milchick for answers here. He says Irv's Audi is on a cruise and will not return. We, of course, later on see it. This is another lie. They just continue to lie, lie, like last week with this is the tallest waterfall. Sometimes really useless lies. They don't have to say what Audi Irv is actually up to, but I guess they want to make it sound like he's having a great time. But then Helly R and Mark are going to be a little awkward throughout this throughout this episode. And before we get to probably more of the inside stuff, the Audi mark is actually where we kind of started with the episode after the Whistling Man intro, where we have Ragabi and Mark living together here as Mark is going through his reintegration. He's actually on the phone with Devin talking about the ORTBO. And, apparently he mentions he fell in a rope exercise or something is what Lumen tells him. Now, he hasn't told Devin, though, that he's going through reintegration. She still thinks that he's just doing the light flashes. And he says, I'm trying to still figure that out. Not letting her in on the fact that he is actually going through reintegration. And I wonder why, right? We don't really know at this point why he is hiding that, other than maybe to protect Devin, or because he knows Rickon is, currently being asked to do this stuff for Lumen, so he doesn't feel comfortable sharing this with her. But we'll see if he lets her in on this anytime soon, because I am wondering how long he will. Maybe he didn't want to get her hopes up as well, right? But now, by the end of the episode, when we see that he is actually starting to really experience some of these things and actually sees Gemma for the first time since her death, it's maybe him thinking, okay, now that I actually know some information, maybe I can tell Devin. But as of this point, Devin does not know. But I'm guessing this drink and the pills are definitely for reintegration. I'm assuming the drink is as well. I'm assuming this is made out of eggnog and other materials, because later on Ragabi will mention, or Mark will mention, that they are out of eggnog at the store. So I'm assuming that was because this is an integral thing to the drink. It could just have been a non sequitur, I guess, but that's what I see. But MDR goes back to working in MDR, and they now only have 3 desks. They've completely moved Irv's desk. It's gone. He's erased out of the picture. All of that. He is gone from memory, except for their actual memories. So we haven't seen anything sort of manipulating that as of yet. But, we end up with Mark kind of reacting to this. A lot of people were kind of, I think, confused on how he's reacting, but I think he is just, Mark S. anyway, is kind of fed up with Lumen as a whole and just wants to do his work. He knows, according to him, right? According to Milchick, they said that Mark's Audi actually begged to come back sooner, right? We know that's not actually true. That's what Mark S. was told. So he's probably thinking, I'm not going to be able to get out of here. I do want to find Miss Casey still, but I'm just going to put my head down, get to work. And he has some, Dylan is actually the one to speak up here. Dylan was the one who was more distant at the beginning, I wouldn't say of the season, but of episode 3, right? When we find out that he is getting Audi visitation from his family members. And Milchick references in this episode about certain privileges that can be revoked. But he is still the one that is really pushing the buttons here when he's like, answer my question to Milchick. And he really starts saying things like, we want the funeral. And they decide that they will have a funeral for Irv. This was something really interesting to me, actually, because I kind of wondered in the past, like, what would happen if any dies? People die at work sometimes, right? Like that. It's not something that happens all the time, right? But it is something that unfortunately happens. And when you're thinking about Severance is a very unique position because the outie would die, at the same time that Innie does, but would never have known what happened. They would have gone in the elevator, and as of they know, they're dead. Well, they don't know that. For all we know. But then they are dead because the Innie could work 5 hours and die due to a heart attack, a stroke, whatever. And the outie never wakes up, is gone. That is something I wonder how they would handle a situation like this. And they, I believe, call it like the bereavement party or something, protocol that Milchick says is usually for people that have died in the office, but they grant, an exception here for MDR and saying goodbye to Irv. And we get Dylan doing a eulogy. They have the watermelon-shaped head of Irv getting wheeled out here. And Dylan's eulogy is really funny, by the way. I really love this eulogy when he's talking about, how Irv had put the toner in his water and stuff because at one point, like, Dylan had put water in the toner, right? And that he was still kind enough to remind Dylan when he was about to take a drink not to drink that. But we just kind of get to see a little bit more of I would say, like, human side to these Innies that we haven't seen a lot as they're sharing memories of somebody that's gone. When we saw in season 1, Mark is talking about Petey and that, like, obviously he didn't feel the same about the previous person who had left I think it was that Dylan G replaced. And he was like, well, we knew that she was leaving and she was gone and stuff, but they don't really talk about any previous workers a lot. Like, they don't spend a lot of time with memories of that. And it was kind of discouraged, it seemed like. And now they're actually getting this open moment to share these memories. We do know Dylan G and Irv had a really good friendship and, really good partnership. So this is hitting Dylan particularly hard. Dylan is going to tell Helly that Miss Casey is Mark's wife. This is kind of when Milchick is gone. He had to go to his performance review. And for this funeral, everything starts kind of getting a little heated here. And Mark storms out at this. Helly follows, and he pretty much tells her he can't trust her, right? He says, they are smarter than us. They already know everything we know because Helena was the one telling them this. And it is unfair, I think, a little bit for Mark S here, because, as Helly says, that's, I can't control that, that she was me, posing as me. Like, that's not my fault. And I think Mark knows that, but he's really at this point like, do I know that, right? Do I know that this is actually you? We also had another exchange when they were in the bathroom at some point, right? When she's like, you couldn't tell it was me? And he's like, maybe I don't know you, right? And I think that's what's going on through Mark's head a lot right now. And for Helly, I've seen a lot of edits of this, or like pictures of this. It really is such a big switch up because for her, and this is where time is really relative, is for Innies, right? For her, just a few hours ago, they were kissing at the elevator. She goes to the gala, spends 39 minutes there, and then has to and then wakes up in the water, getting drowned by Irv. We don't know how long she stayed awake after that, but then she wakes up in this episode. But at most, it's a couple hours for her from when they were kissing, and now they're standing here and he's acting all weird and distant to her. for her, it's a big what is going on type of thing here. She does have some real issues as well with like saying that the Audi was down here using her body, and I think that is another thing that is uh, really interesting about just the idea of Severance as a whole is whose body is it, right? It's Helly's when she's down there. It's Helena's when she's upstairs, right? And you know, when she is saying this, it's like kind of feeling like that's what you did with the OTC though, right? So she is kind of, I wouldn't say hypocritical, but it reads a little hypocritical, right? Like when she took over when they did the OTC, she hijacked her Audi in the moment and carried out 39 minutes of, trying to burn the company down. And now she finds out that Helena was posing as any Helly, and she feels violated. And that's just kind of the fun idea of these two consciousness sharing one body, and whose is it? Who is right? Who is wrong? Right? I find that just particularly interesting. But yeah, I mean, it's true. I don't think you can. If you're Mark, it would be tough to trust Helly in this situation too, because you don't know if she's like, oh, we got found out. Now I'm going to go down and pose as her again, which was Helena's idea, by the way. At the beginning of this episode, we learned that that's what she wanted to do, is go back down there and kind of try to reset. And they're like, no, you have to go down as Helly R. Because in Helena's point of view, this is the person that threatened to kill her, right? She was trying to hang herself. She was trying to chop off fingers, or threatened to. Like, this is a potential risk for Helena giving her body back to Helly. So you can kind of see that as well. And then she also mentions that Irv tried to kill her too. So she's not particularly big on innies right now, but we don't know. We'll see how she feels about Mark, hopefully in the coming weeks here. Okay, so we then had Milchick going to Nat. He asks her, like, can I ask you about how you felt about receiving those paintings? And again, it's all in the eyes here. They don't have this conversation. And I don't know how we're supposed to feel about Nat receiving that either. Nat is pretty high up from what we know in Lumen. She is the one direct access to the board and is constantly on the phone with the board. It does seem like from her eyes, the last two times they've talked about this, that she was uncomfortable with the gift of paintings in her image of Kier, but still not willingly, openly talking about this. So something to kind of keep note of here. Then we have Milchick's performance review, which was one of the highlights, I think, of the episode for me, because this line here by Mr. Drummond of, if it should go longer than 4 hours, lunch will be provided. And Milchick saying, let's hope that's not necessary. And then it's just this, here's the lunch menu. Like, we're going to be here a while. They said it could take anywhere from 2 to 6 hours. That is an insane performance review. Mine never take that long, and I hope they never will take that long. And I wonder how it took that long. We kind of see throughout the day, that they have a few complaints. He uses too big of words. He failed at the ORTBO. He failed at the niceness reforms. A lot is riding here on Milchick and his handling of MDR, which Drummond says the completion of Cold Harbor will be one of the defining days on the planet, not just at Lumen, but on the planet, as we get closer and closer, with the finale being titled Cold Harbor, I believe. I believe we find out what that will be coming soon by the end of the season. Okay, so that was Milchick's performance review. We'll go ahead and move on to Milchick saying goodbye to Mark at the end of the episode here, where he's, asking about the rest of the funeral. Did you get what you wanted out of the funeral? I love Mark's response here of, I can't wait to read Miss Huang's article in the newspaper. What was it that was called? The Bullshit Gazette? Just, I love as we start getting throughout the show, Mark S being more and more defiant. We had heard how he was with Petey being there, right? Like he would even make like fart noises or whatever during Petey's speeches or whatever is what Dylan says at some point. But when he's thrust it with filling in for Petey, he does the job. And when he has to bring on a new person like Helly, he really starts taking the responsibility. But as things started to go throughout season 1 and we started getting him more and more into that place where he is more like F. Lumen, we're now seeing that kind of start creeping back up again. We saw it in the premiere as well. He's like, I'd like to hear it from them and stuff. But the rest of this episode, he kind of took a step back and he's starting to think more like, oh boy, I just want to like kind of do my job and get out of here. Irv's not really dead. He's just not here. And we don't need to do all of this. But I think here with Milchick coming in here, it kind of makes Mark kind of recenter, in my opinion, here, where he's like, oh yeah, this is my enemy, is Mr. Milchick and Lumen as a whole. This is our enemy. And I think he's probably going to be a little bit more on board again with the rest of MDR next week. I could be wrong too, but because I didn't really see him going this way with it this week. But I thought that was good to kind of see how he handles it. And to be honest, it kind of felt like we were seeing Mark scout a bit on the inside, and that could be either because of reintegration, but I don't think it was. We did get a little glimpse of stuff on the desk changing a bit. But I think it's just more to show kind of how these people are very similar, like I was talking about a week or two ago of, this is maybe Mark S is how Mark would have been before Gemma passed away. We don't know how he acted before Gemma passed away. We've heard stories of them having good times, him, Devin, Rickon, and Gemma being very close, but we haven't had like actual flashback or anything like that to show how, how how Mark was prior to Gemma's death. But I'm starting to think that how we saw him react here is very similar to how I would have seen Audi Mark react. And I think it's because they're obviously the same person, right? This is the same person. It's just they're just a little bit different due to their memories. But I think what we're starting to see is more of Mark Scout coming out in Mark S. Whether it's how he reacted to the situation, and also here with Mr. Milchick when he is saying, the bullshit gazette, and Milchick gets close to him, really close, uncomfortably close, and asks, did you tell Helly you fucked her Audi at the ORTBO? This, Mark doesn't really answer this, but it is a question we have in the sense of we do know he hasn't said anything yet, but will he mention it? And will that make Helly a little uncomfortable that, one, her body was used in that manner without her consent, but two, that again, Mark had no clue that this was not Helly and that this was Helena. So I think that is something that we might see creep up in the week or so coming up. So that's the dynamic I'm really looking at here, is how is Mark and Helly interacting in the weeks ahead? Will he kind of get over his fears of the fact he might be getting played again and kind of, like I said, recenter himself on his objective of getting Miss Casey out? We'll see. So on top of this here, we also had a great conversation with Devin and Rickon, as Rickon was writing a book, writing the book of the UUR in Lumen language. And we kind of see that as Mark is leaving for the day and Helena's watching him. And, we see these characters going home. We see Rickon and Devin having a conversation where he's reading part of the book to her, and she clearly calls out the hypocrisy here. Because if you remember in season 1, obviously Rickon was very anti-Severance at that dinner party, right? In Without Dinner. In the pilot, he is, saying about how unethical it was, right? How morally it was controversial. All these controversial, and he keeps going on the list of morally, ethically, all of that. And we do know that in the world of Severance, there are questions in the media. We were talking about in one of those first episodes where Natalie is on the TV talking about how good Severance is, and somebody brings up that somebody's outie became pregnant from what their innie was doing. And that, leads to those type of questions we might again have with Helena and Mark, or Helly R and Mark. We'll see if that progresses at all. But Devin calls this out and says, these aren't your words. This isn't your message. And Rickon tries to defend himself here and says it'll be a Trojan's horse, which is the title of the episode here, where he's talking about if he can get his ideas into the minds of the innies, it could lead to a revolt, which, obviously is not too crazy because that's what happened in season 1. But as Devin points out, when you kind of tiptoeing or following the Lumen line of, and towing that company line, it's not really going to lead to the same sort of thing. Like, this whole excerpt here is about how they should be kind of happy to be cogs in a machine, which is the opposite of what the UUR was saying. There's quotes in the UUR when we get to it in the episode about, you don't need your work as much as they need you. I highly doubt that type of language is in the Lumen version of the UUR. So it's those type of things where, Rickon is kind of selling out here. And she says, if you do this, and we know how Lumen is hurting people, not just people, her own family. I don't know if he knows anything about Gemma yet, right? From last week, it didn't seem like it, or 2 weeks ago, it didn't seem like it. But when you're talking about Mark, who is his family, his brother-in-law, he knows what he has been through. Then she says, you're hurting them too. And we will see. But, he's doing this for the financial money, which is obviously the financial incentive here. And he mentions that, like, this can be good for us financially. This can be good for us career-wise, to not have to worry as much about money and stuff. They have a baby, so you can kind of understand Rickon's point of view on this as well. But compared to Rickon in season 1, this is him kind of selling out a little bit here. So very curious to see how this goes. Will Devin stand by him at some point? Can they have some marital problems with this? Or will Rickon realize he's kind of messing up here and take a stand? I don't know. I don't know where I see them going with Rickon yet. But Devin knows more than he does, and I think if she really wants him to maybe not do this, it'd be best to kind of fill him in. And we kind of cap it all off here. Mark coming home, Ragabi's, living in his basement now, and we have this conversation at the end, and we see the remains, and Mark mentions so these aren't even her remains then. And apparently Ragabi says that Lumen has people on the inside at, medical facilities and at funeral homes or coroner offices that would be able to make the switch. And while he is going upstairs, he's asking how much longer can we do the next bit of reintegration. He starts experiencing some glitches, and he's hearing Gemma's voice and thinking it's Ragabi talking. And as he goes up the stairs, he ends up in the hallway at Lumen, and he, is hearing what Miss Casey is saying about his Audi, which are some just really great lines. I don't have them written down here, though, but I do think it was funny. Just what, those type of what Miss Casey would tell them in the wellness sessions. Your Audi likes this. Your Audi is good at this. There were some good ones in this episode. But we then see Miss Gemma, or Miss Casey as Gemma as Miss Casey. And this is the first time he's seen her, and he's seeing her for the first time as Miss Casey. This is not how Gemma usually dressed or looked, right? With her hairstyle and all that. But he sees her, and we see his face, and she says to him, your Audi is going to... cuts off right here. Now, somebody said that in the German subs it says die, but I don't know if they would spoil that. There's no even reason to put it in there if it's not said in the episode. So I haven't checked that myself, but that's what somebody said. Which isn't, I would say, shocking, I guess, right? Because we do know that PD had some issues with reintegration as well, so it is a possibility, but I doubt they're killing off their main character. I just can't see that by the finale. But hey, this show's been moving at a pace that is pretty ridiculous, so who knows, right? But just seeing Mark see Gemma and know for sure that this is real. This is a real thing that is happening. He now knows she's down there. He sees her. It's from his memories, right? He knows for sure that this is happening, and now he will just have to continue following Ragabi's steps, and hopefully it leads to him being able to be fully reintegrated and go find her in the severed floor, or the testing floor, which is where she was before that we saw. So to kind of start wrapping it up here, that's the end of the episode. We'll start talking some quick theories here on where we can go, but we're halfway through the season. We got 5 episodes left. I can't wait to see how this shakes out, because some of the critics have seen all of them. So they know where it is, and they ranked this season very high. Very well reviewed. So I do think we're in store for a really interesting back half of the season. And if we go by episode titles of Cold Harbor being the finale, it stands to reason maybe that's when Mark hits 100%. He's at 85, 86% as of this episode. So we're getting closer and closer to him wrapping up Cold Harbor. Will they figure out what that means, the characters in the show? I don't know. But I do think by the finale, we will have a fully reintegrated Mark. And I've seen theories again that might throw off Mark's status on Cold Harbor, because I believe they've stated before, right? Severed employees are the ones that can work on the files. It's something in them that helps them, that calls them when they're putting the numbers in there, and that usually the outie self would not be able to work on it. How does it work if you're now fully whole? I would think if you're fully whole, you would still be able to do your work, because your innie self would be able to pick up the slack on your outie self, right? Like, I feel like you'd be able to kind of do it. Like, if I forgot how to ride a bike, but then my innie knew how to ride a bike, and then I fused, that memory should be there somewhere for me to be able to ride the bike. That's kind of how I would think about it. But either way, he now knows she's down there, and that is, when he decided to do the reintegration at the end of episode 3, it was because Gabi said she's down there. He's still taking somebody's word. He's either taking his innie's word, which never flat out said that Gemma was alive, right? He just said she was alive. He was holding a picture of Gemma, which of course makes Devin think that, but Mark has obviously gone through so much stuff. He's like, no, she's dead. I saw her die. But now that he can see her with his own eyes, it shows that, okay, this is real. I gotta keep going through this to see her. And I wonder how long our days are numbered here with just Mark S as the innie, who's one of the best characters in the show, is innie Mark. But hey, we don't want to drag the show out either. So obviously, if they're going to be fusing these two characters into each other again, the good of Mark S will be there along with the best of Mark Scout. And I think it'll make Mark a really interesting and intriguing character going forward. Really curious, like I said, to see what happens with Rickon and Devin going forward, because this show doesn't really seem like a show that would spend a lot of time on oh, I'm divorcing you type of thing. So I don't know if that'll really come in handy or come into play. But hey, it is something that could happen, I guess, if he continues to betray his own ideals. Mr. Milchick is really being set up for as a fall guy. It feels like, hey, Mark S is probably going to complete Cold Harbor under your watch. That's great. But he just got a really bad, report card, essentially. And he just took over the floor. This is still only probably a few weeks at most into it. And he's already getting a performance review, which I think is pretty funny. So next week's episode is called Attila. Bonds are tested. Mark continues on his path of discovery. And that comes out Thursday night at 9 p.m. Eastern, and Friday for most of the rest of the world. But yeah, so that's episode 5, Trojan's Horse. Like I said, can't wait to see what episode 6 has in store for us here as we get closer and closer and closer to the end of the season. And hopefully, I mean, this show is number 1 on the darn Apple TV Plus rankings all the time. So hopefully the official wording of season 3 comes in soon, and we're able to hopefully get them started filming soon, so it doesn't take 3 years for us to get this again next time. So I think what I'm going to cover next here is, after Severance Season 2, I do have some probably like one-off episodes that'll be coming, but I think I'm going to take a dive into Mr. Robot, which is a show I have not seen, but I put in the request at my library because it's not streaming anywhere, and I should be getting the DVD. I'm on hold for it. So I'll probably start watching and recording. I would assume I'm going to probably do a podcast for each episode on my first watch, my first experience with Mr. Robot. And we will probably pick that up sometime after Severance Season 2. And I might record some of those during the course of this next few weeks here, just to have it kind of in the can, ready to go for when this show's over. But I think that is the next show I'm going to be dipping my toes into here is Mr. Robot. I've heard really great things. It's only 4 seasons, so I think I'm going to try to dive into that. Let me know if you have any suggestions for me on what shows I should be checking out. Should I be watching Yellow Jackets? Should I be watching some of these other shows like White Lotus or that other people are watching? Let me know in the comments or send us an email, toptvpod@gmail.com. You can also reach us at social medias at TopTVPod on all of our networks. Thank you all for listening or watching along. Have a great rest of your week, and we'll catch you next time when we talk episode 6 of season 2 of Severance.